The dreaded blank game week 29 is here, and whether you're looking to free hit this week or you're just looking to make some transfers for the next couple of weeks before wildcarding in game week 30 or 31, well, we have got the team for you. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. It's time to spend those transfers, use those chips, and enjoy the best that we can get from a game week with not all of the biggest teams playing, but we can still do something. So today, guys, we have a team that is, I guess, a free hit team in a way, but also I think if you guys are just using transfers to try and navigate game week 29, maybe you've got a few saved up, maybe you do need to take a hit. What I would say is try and get at least 8 or 9 players mentioned in today's video. We're going to be talking about my favorite free hit team, my perfect team for game week 29, but then we're also going to have a look at some alternative players at the end that you might be thinking about as well. So do let me know, guys, how many of the players we talk about today are you going to have in your team come the game week 29 deadline? How many can you get to? If you can get to 8 or more, I think you're going to be in a super good position. So let's get going. We've got unlimited transfers for those of you on a free hit. The team that I've created today costs 98.9 million, and it's optimized not just for game week 29, but we're also going to talk a little bit about some players that could be pretty good for game week 30 as well, if you are maybe planning on wildcarding in game week 31 and you just need a couple of players to serve you well for the next 2 game weeks. So let's start off in goal, and we have got Sells here. He places Ipswich away in game week 29 and then has a Manchester United at home fixture in game week 30. Of course, Nottingham Forest coming off the back of 2 clean sheets against Arsenal and Man City, which is a little surprising, but actually they have kept the chances conceded kind of pretty low actually in the last couple of games, despite before that looking a little shaky defensively. So I'm not sure if they are back as a defence, but certainly the last 2 games have been a positive indication of how well they are doing. Now with Nottingham Forest, I know a lot of people will automatically jump to the Forest defenders, and I do think there are a couple of defenders that I do want to talk about at the end of the video, but right now I would say if you had to have just one defensive asset from Forest, I think I would go for Sells, not only because the Forest defenders don't really have too much attacking threat, but the save points are going to be really useful for clocking up some additional points, as well as any clean sheets that you might get in game week 29 or indeed in game week 30 if you're looking for a goalkeeper for multiple game weeks. So Sells would be the goalkeeper I would buy. Anyway, let's move on to the defense, guys. We have got Gabriel, and I know this is a tricky fixture on paper against Chelsea. It is a home fixture, but at the end of the day, with a team like Arsenal, they are certainly a team that you back to keep a clean sheet against anyone. And, you know, an Arsenal against Chelsea sounds like a tough fixture, but that's just as good as, you know, a Wolves against Southampton in many ways, because Arsenal are such a superior defence. It doesn't really matter as much who they're facing. We see Arsenal pretty much getting a clean sheet every other game at the moment, which is absolutely perfect. That's probably the best you can hope for generally from any defender, any defense. That is really, really good. And even in the game against Manchester United, it was only a set piece, a free kick that was conceded in that game. Raya played very well and Arsenal defended pretty well generally, I thought, during that game. So Chelsea at home, decent. Fulham at home, decent. These are not perfect fixtures, but you trust Arsenal to keep a clean sheet in each of these. Gabriel, of course, a player often in contention for some bonus points as well. The next defender we're going to have here is Gavardio, and I particularly want to mention Gavardio for those of you guys who are not free hitting this week but looking for a defender for the next 2 game weeks, because Brighton at home, it's an okay fixture, and Man City certainly are improving defensively compared to a couple of months ago, but really it's that game week 30 fixture at home against Leicester that could be really nice. So for that reason, Gavardio is going to be very useful for those not necessarily free hitting this week, but I think he could be good for free hitters as well, but more a player for those who need someone for 2 game weeks, I would say. But anyway, Gavardio, we know he's got a decent amount of attacking threat. He's scored plenty of goals, not just this season, but in last season as well. He is a little bit of a goal-scoring defender, and you never know when you're going to get something out of that. And our final defender today is going to be Ait-Nouri, Southampton away. Now, Ait-Nouri is not the superstar attacking defender as he once was earlier on in the season and perhaps last season. However, he is still creating a little bit. He is still attacking a little bit, still taking the the odd shot on, which is going to be pretty useful. I think anytime a team faces Southampton, it's a good idea to have a look at the players from the team facing Southampton to see if you can get any points from this. So could we get a clean sheet here? We know it's certainly possible, and Wolves should have some of the better odds of a clean sheet going into Game Week 29, probably alongside Arsenal and indeed Nottingham Forest. These three teams probably most likely to keep clean sheets in this new game week. So Aït-Nouri, I like him, 4.8 million, pretty decent value for money there. We do have another Wolves defender I want to talk about later again, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But before we go on to the midfielders, guys, make sure you do drop a like on the video if you haven't done already. Super helpful for the channel. And of course, do subscribe as well if you are enjoying the FPL videos this season. I know around 40-45% of you guys watching are not subscribed, so do help me out there. But let's move on to the midfielders next. And we have three midfielders I think you guys are going to just all agree with. And then the final two midfielders in this squad, I think you might be a little bit more skeptical about, but hopefully you guys can hear me out. So first of all, Bruno Fernandes. Now for free hitters in particular, I think Bruno would be one of the first players on my team sheet for Game Week 29 alone. If you're looking to make a transfer, maybe Leicester and Forest as a combo is not so great, but Leicester as a standalone fixture is obviously a really nice one. Now generally for Manchester United, even though they do have a favourable fixture in Game Week 29, I wouldn't really be looking at any players outside of Bruno, as it seems pretty clear. I think even Manchester United fans will agree that Bruno really is carrying this team with his set pieces, being a penalty taker, and just running the game generally. He always looks like the most dangerous man on the pitch. So I think he could do really, really well in a favourable fixture here. He's been in pretty good form, and I think that is going to continue into Game Week 29. Bryan Mbeumo is here as well. Bournemouth away is the fixture, and as we've seen recently, Bournemouth are a good team, but they can still concede goals, and we do see that time and time again. And who's going to be scoring the goals against the likes of Bournemouth? Well, you think it's probably going to be between Bryan Mbeumo and Johan Wissa, the two, I guess, most attacking players in that team. You can maybe put Sharda in that conversation as well, of course. But Mbeumo, with his penalties, is certainly the player I would be looking at. One of the top scoring players in FPL this season. And Bournemouth away, Newcastle away, they're not perfect fixtures, but Brentford as a top attack can definitely get something from these games. Our next player is Kluivert, who has been in really good form. I think, again, he's a player I don't think anyone's going to argue about going for Kluivert, with Dango kind of out of the question now, having been benched in Game Week 28. And Semenyo, yes, he's good for minutes, but Semenyo maybe not always looking like the most likely player on the pitch to get a goal contribution. Kluivert, with the form that he's in at the moment, taking on shots, creating for his teammates as well. He did have that goal disallowed in Game Week 28, scored a wonderful goal in Game Week 27 before that. And I think he's just generally a really, really nice pick, not just for this game week, but for Ipswich as well. So I think if you're not on a free hit this week, you're probably already going to have Kluivert in your team, so he's great to stick around for the next couple of game weeks. And of course, if you are free hitting, whether you had Kluivert in your non-free hit team or not, I would make sure that he remains in that Game Week 29 free hit team as well. And this is where things get a little bit more controversial with the midfielders. So first of all, Savinho. And I know a lot of people, particularly those looking for players for the next 2 game weeks, will perhaps be looking at what Man City players they can get to. And Phil Foden is probably a player very high on the kind of list of expectations of maybe players you expected to see in this video. However, I'm actually going to put Savinho in ahead of Foden, and this is not a money issue either. It is simply the fact that Savinho generally has been playing better than Foden recently. And actually, some people will say, is Savinho rotation risk? Well, the past 5-6 games for Man City have suggested no, because Savinho is playing every single game and playing 90 minutes in most of the games as well. So he's been a super important player to Man City. He's been one of Man City's better performers this season as well. And unfortunately, the same can't quite be said of Phil Foden. So I do genuinely think that Savinho could even potentially be better for minutes than Foden. And I think Savinho is in better form as well. And particularly when we're looking for, short periods of time. So we're looking either for Game Week 29 only, maybe you're wildcarding in Game Week 30, maybe you're wildcarding in Game Week 31. Whatever the case, the players that you pick now, for whatever reason, are most likely going to be for super short term. And in those instances, I think we back a player who is in the better form, who is playing the most games right now, rather than going too much on historical kind of stuff. And I think that is emphasized even more with my fifth midfielder here, who is actually going to be Callum Hudson-Odoi. And yes, I know a lot of people will say Elanga surely is the midfielder you would pick from Nottingham Forest, and yes, if I was looking for a long-term midfielder from Nottingham Forest, I would pick Elanga, because Elanga has the stronger data. He's done very well previously in the season. But if we're looking for these Forest players in the best form right now, the answer is Hudson-Odoi. Obviously scored against Man City, scored a couple of weeks ago against Newcastle as well. So he has been in some good form. He is taking on shots. He also came very close to scoring another goal in that game against Man City. So he seems like he is full of confidence. He's taking more shots on than many other players, including Elanga at the moment. Maybe not always from the most dangerous areas. However, we are seeing that, you know, kind of like Kluivert, yes, the underlying numbers aren't necessarily there, but the form and the confidence are clearly there. And I think that does make a difference when you're looking for those short-term punts. Go for the guy who is performing right now, rather than using underlying data to predict that, you know, in the future, these things could improve. I think we've got to focus right on the now. And Ipswich away, Manchester United at home. No matter if you're free hitting, just using transfers, I think Hudson-Odoi at 5.2 million not only is a fabulous differential, but a really good opportunity to get some points in some pretty favourable fixtures. Let's move up front, guys. Erling Haaland is, of course, going to be in this team. If you have the pick of the bunch, you're probably going to go for this guy. There's no other premium player really standing out. Salah is not playing in Gameweek 29. He has no fixture. Saka is injured. Palmer plays against Arsenal and has been pretty badly out of form and does struggle in some of those bigger games. And we also see the likes of Son not even necessarily starting every game. He did, of course, score that penalty in Gameweek 28, but against Fulham, not super confident there either. So if you've got a lot of money to spend, Haaland is probably worth going for. And again, this comes back to it being super short term. We're looking at Game Week 29 and Game Week 30 at a maximum before we're looking to maybe wild card or, you know, go back to your regular team after the free hit. So you may as well spend the money, even though Haaland over a longer period of time may not be great value for money. If we have a lot of money to spend, why not? So I'm not saying Haaland is suddenly a good value for money pick, because I'm not convinced that he is. He might be, but I'm not totally convinced. But I think for now, I think he's worth going for sure. Particularly with Marmoush getting benched last week, we want to have that very easy, clear, guaranteed, nailed access to this Man City attack. And Erling Haaland provides that. Great for Brighton at home, but even better for Leicester at home in Game Week 30 as well. So really nice kind of short-term punt, even if he is a bit more expensive. And who can forget Chris Wood? He was always going to be on this team sheet. If you're free hitting in Game Week 29, Wood is maybe even the first player you pick in your free hit team, surely. I know a lot of you guys will have Wood in your non-free hit teams anyway, but it's Ipswich away, Manchester United at home for the next 2 weeks. Really nice for a man who has scored a lot of goals this season, it has to be said. And even though he has failed to score in the last couple of game weeks, I still think, you know, he is the star and, well, not necessarily star, but I guess the point of the attack of this Nottingham Forest team that seems to be defying all logic and doing super well. So yeah, I'm big on the triple Nottingham Forest for Game Week 29. Even if you're looking to Game Week 30 as well, I think triple Forest is very much on the cards right now. And we are going to be speaking about some more potential Forest players that you could get for your Game Week 29 team as well when we get to kind of the bonus players I want to talk about. But there are some other bonus players that I have thrown on the bench today. So let's look at the bench. David Raya. Another goalkeeper I would strongly consider this week would be Raya. I think Sells and Raya would be the top two. And if you already have one of these guys, that is perfect for Game Week 29. It really is. Again, despite the seemingly difficult fixture, it doesn't worry me too much when it comes to David Raya and the Arsenal defence generally. They are kind of fixture-proof defensively, is something we've seen. Evan Nielsen is probably genuinely my third favourite forwards to go for Game Week 29 right now. He genuinely is. So he is making the bench in this team. And I did kind of hype him up a little bit last game week. I said that he was a player I was looking at closely, but I was a little bit concerned about his minutes in game week 28, which is why I wasn't going all in on Evanilson. But I did also say, let's give him one more week. Let's see what happens. You could go from early in 28, and if you did, obviously you got the goal from him. But if you didn't, we've got a little bit more information, and if Evanilson is going to be the starting striker for Bournemouth, and it looks like that is going to be the case, then that's a very advantageous position to be in. Pretty cheap at 5.6 million, so if you're looking for that bargain forward, Evanilson would certainly be the guy I would be going for. I don't think I want to rule out Kirkes either, even though we have seen Bournemouth conceding a couple of goals. He has got assists in the last 2 games, which is pretty handy indeed. A fabulous cross in game week 28 to set up Tavernier for that first goal for Bournemouth today. And I don't think clean sheet points are super likely for Bournemouth, which is why Kirkes has only made the bench in this team. But at the same time, it is certainly a possibility. I mean, Brentford didn't score in game week 28, for example, so it's not like it's impossible. And of course, Kirkes will be playing at home as well this game week. And finally, Tarkowski. I think Everton are probably the other defence worth mentioning today. West Ham at home. If you had to pick a Everton defender, I would probably go for Tarkowski just because of the bonus points potential and the aerial threat from those set pieces. You never know when you're going to get something from a player like that. So yeah, Kirkes, Tarkowski, I guess are the other defenders I like. If you're not keen on Gabriel, Gvardiol, Kirkes, Tarkowski are two of the key defenders I think I would be having a strong look at. Of course, you could also go for double Nottingham Forest defence, but I think I prefer double Nottingham Forest attack against Ipswich this week. So, with that said, we need to throw a captain's armband on, we're going to put it on Haaland, but we'll put the vice-captain on Wood, and honestly, both of these guys look great to me. I think Bruno would be maybe the other player I would think about for captaincy in game week 29 if you do want to take the chance on a midfielder. But Haaland and Wood look really good for captaincy. I think the fact that Haaland is such a, a long-term great FPL asset, we probably have a lot more confidence in a player like Haaland than Wood. But Wood is a guy who has obviously put up some fabulous performances this season, but the data probably will push us towards Haaland. If we're looking at those underlying stats, if we're looking at those projections, they do favour Haaland far more than they do Wood. So that's why the captain's armband is on Haaland. But like I say, I am not against captaining Chris Wood in game week 29 if that's something that you would like to have a look at. But these are the players I've chosen for my favourite team for game week 29. But there are a few other players that I think are genuinely worth considering, and you could maybe mix and match, remove some of these players and include some of the bonus players I'm going to talk about, because I really think all of them are great. So let's just go position by position, and I've also got data on screen, and this data you see on screen is for the last 6 game weeks per start, what kind of numbers we're seeing from players. So how many shots they're taking, their XG per start, their key passes per start, their expected points and actual points per start. All of that is on screen for you guys today. So we've got Pickford and Jose Sa as the 2 goalkeepers I wouldn't mind going for. Pickford could be okay for game week 29 alone, but if you're looking for a goalkeeper for the next 2 game weeks, I much prefer the goalkeepers we've already mentioned, Sells and Raya, but also Jose Sa as well. If you're looking for a cheaper goalkeeper, maybe you need to try and save some money for some other moves potentially, because of course Jose Sa has 2 good fixtures in 29 and 30, Southampton and then West Ham. Looking at the defenders, I know everyone is usually talking about Aina and Milenkovic, but if you've already got Aina and Milenkovic, I think that's absolutely fine. If they're already in your squad, I think that's still very, very good. But if I'm looking for a new defender to bring in from Forest, I would be looking at Murillo and Nico Williams. And the reason is we see Williams probably has the best attacking output out of the Nottingham Forest defenders. He seems to be shooting and creating just a little bit more than his teammates, and also comes in at a cheaper price at 4.4 million. So Nico Williams looking good. And Murillo looks like the best Nottingham Forest defender if you're looking for those bonus points on top of your clean sheet. So yes, Aina is great, Milenkovic is great. However, if I'm buying a new Forest defender, I think I would, at this present moment, go for Murillo and Williams. But, as always, like I mentioned earlier, the Forest defenders have very, very low attacking threat generally. So, I think it's not like super important you go for Murillo or Williams. If you genuinely do prefer Aina or Milenkovic, yeah, like I say, totally fine, because I know people are going to come at me in the comments for even suggesting that these maybe slightly more differential Forest defenders might actually be the ones to go for. We've got Mykolenko here if you want to go for a slightly cheaper Everton defender. I like his price tag at 4.4, but if you're really looking for that bargain defender for Game Week 29 and indeed Game Week 30, then Agbadou would be the place I would go. Now, he has been injured, but he did come back, return to the Wolves starting 11 in Game Week 28. He is a starting 4 million Wolves defender. So really useful. Wolves an improving defense with very good fixtures coming up in the next two. If you're looking for a new defender for your FPL team and you don't have very much money to spend at all, Agbadou really does solve that problem. So he's definitely a player I'm having a very close look at. If you're on a free hit, budget is probably not going to be a big issue, but if you're using transfers, you might actually find it quite useful to try and free up some budget. You know, if you're selling Trent or Hall, for example, to try and fund, bringing in Haaland, for example, then Agbadou may be the guy to free up all of that money from your Hall, from your Trent, in order to, really reinvest that money, which could be pretty handy. In the midfield position, I've got Foden in here. Like, I don't want to rule out Foden entirely. I think at this present moment, I do prefer Savinho, but there is not a huge amount in it, particularly if money is no issue. If you're on a free hit or if money is not a problem, then you could definitely go for Foden as well. But I slightly prefer Savinho regardless at the moment. We mentioned Elanga before. I still think he's a really good pick. Still think he's a super good pick and would certainly be considering him as well as Hudson-Odoi. Some people will prefer Elanga. Some people will prefer Hudson-Odoi. For me, it's Hudson-Odoi. Having watched him last few game weeks, he seems to be the guy more likely to get attacking returns right now. But Gibbs-White, a little bit more expensive than Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. Actually, over $1 million more expensive. But again, if you're on a free hit and budget isn't really a problem, then Gibbs-White is actually putting up some slightly better attacking numbers than his midfield counterpart. So you could potentially go here. You can see it on screen, guys. 2.3 shots per game, which is actually, I think it could even be more than Chris Wood. I think it might even be more than Chris Wood, which is really quite impressive. So if you're looking for the Forest player who shoots the most, it's only 2.3 shots per game, but hey, Gibbs-White could be your guy. And we're going to put some Arsenal midfielders in here. We'll put Ødegaard in here if, you know, you've got some money to spend. You want to get the a set piece taker, penalty taker from Arsenal. Penalty taker is always super useful in the game of FPL. And Nwaneri, I'm not super keen on Nwaneri. Maybe not as much as I was previously, but he's still a consideration if you just desperately need a super ultra cheap guy. So he's in this list really not because he's going to get the most points necessarily, or we have the best projections for points for him, but more that he is just the best ultra cheap midfielder, to get right now. So a consideration still. And Bowen is going to be the final player on this list. Everton away, I don't love this fixture. Everton have been keeping things fairly tight at the back, though Everton, despite conceding very few chances, do seem to concede a goal per game pretty much. So in that sense, maybe Bowen, who has been in good form, who is putting up some pretty good numbers over the past 6 game weeks, he could be a consideration. And Wolves in game week 30 is not too bad for him either. And the other 2 forwards I want to speak about today are Wissa and Beto, who I think I do prefer the other 3 forwards we mentioned today. But Wissa and Beto, I guess, would be, the 4th and 5th favourites forwards to go for your FPL teams this week. So I do like the look of these 2. I think, maybe a little interchangeable, Wissa, Beto and Evan-Nilsson. So pick your favourite. I think I prefer Evan-Nilsson, but Wissa and Beto are good too. Maybe a small shout out for Raul Jimenez, but again, I think I prefer these other guys. And Marmoush, it's really difficult to say, having seen him benched in game week 28. It's a little bit more difficult to recommend him at this moment. So for that reason, he has kind of fallen off the recommendations for this list. But certainly if you do have Marmoush already, you got to keep him, you got to play him, you got to try him out and see what he can do, even if there is a little bit of concern there. But the expectations should be lower on a blank game week. We're not expecting a super high scoring game week, so we just got to do the best with what we've got. So those are the recommendations for those additional players you might want to go for. We'll put the main team back on screen right now, guys. I think this team looks really, really strong, but let me know what you think about it. Would you make any changes to this team? And as we said at the beginning of the video, let me know how many of the players we spoke about in today's video, how many of those players do you have? It doesn't matter if they're the players on screen now or the players on the other list. How many players will you have by the Game Week 29 deadline? And we'll include Milenkovic and Aina in those players as well. Let's see if any of you guys can get 8, 9 or more. I'd be super keen to know. But anyway, guys, that is the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please do drop a like. If you found it useful, of course, do subscribe. And yeah, we'll be back for plenty more content ahead of this difficult to navigate Game Week 29 blank. Here we go, guys. See you later.